I start is that this has been a 2-year effort planning this. It's kind of insane to believe, but Mohammed knew when to start. So here are all of the people who over the past 2 years have volunteered an incredible amount of time to make this happen. So 2 years ago, we got a committee together to prepare a report for the Evolution Society, for SSE, recommending to hold these workshops and why we should do it. And then Mohammed pushed it through the society to get funding and support. And then a lot of the people who are here and facilitating this, we got together, started planning the surveys that I'll be talking about a year ago. And so it's really 2 years of work. And I want to thank all of the volunteers who are here, and particularly want to highlight Mohammed because this really was a vision that he had. This needs to happen. He pushed it through. He lent incredible support and time, just like all of us, to this and really assembled this coalition. So just a word of thanks before we start. And if it turns out to be terrible, it would be awkward to thank all the people at the end. So I'm doing it in the beginning. That's the only slide that I prepared. And so what I want to do is review, in the short introduction, what I want to do is review the pre-workshop survey responses, because I think it might be interesting for you to see, given what you've said, where you fall and what are other people in this room feeling like. So the first question, I've zoomed in insanely, so maybe you can read some of it. The projector is pretty poor. The first question was, how confident are you about your overall job prospects post-PhD? Strangely, no one said low. No, not strangely. I was going to joke. I inverted it. So very low confidence is 0. That's great. A few of you are very confident, and then everybody else falls in the middle. The good news is, as far as just finding a job, I believe, Liz, you know the numbers. I think the unemployment rate for PhDs is something around 2% in general. So those it's legitimate to feel that you will have a job. The goal of the workshop isn't just about talking, will you have a job? The goal is to help you on the path towards finding the job that will be satisfying, that you will love, and that is the right fit for you, right? And that's really what the workshop is about. Question number 2 was, on a scale from 1 to 5, rate how prepared you feel you are for a career beyond being a tenure-track professor at a research university. And so the responses were, 1 person felt prepared, has an incredible mentor. Some are slightly prepared, 20%, neutral, somewhat unprepared, and extremely unprepared, which of course is not surprising because our advisors are really good at preparing us for academia, but they don't have, even the best advisors typically don't have much experience about outside of the tenure track academic job, right? So this isn't surprising, and for the people that feel prepared or slightly prepared, you're way ahead of where I was as a graduate student. So in my 4th year, everybody knows about 3rd year blues when you get depressed during your PhD. I was delayed. I'm slower than most. So I got that in my 4th year, and I got it really bad, and I was this close to dropping out. I remember that time vividly. This is 2007. I'm really close to dropping out. I'm trying to look for jobs and job postings and figure out what I really should be doing. And not only did I not feel prepared, I felt like the entire graduate training unprepared me. I felt like I was more marketable and valuable before I went into my PhD. So I was a computer science and math major, computer science minor. I was turning down job offers from hedge funds to go do bioinformatics. And then, this was 2001, and then in 2007, 6 years later, I find myself in this strange state of, what can I possibly do? I never wanted to be a software developer, but I'm not even qualified for that. I'm a Perl programmer now. You can't go to Google with Perl. No one would hire me. I was more hireable before I went. I'm now an expert on the evolution of silencing elements in budding yeasts. And if I'm not going to do this academic thing, who the hell cares about that, right? So it was rather destabilizing, and I still vividly remember that. And the good news is it turns out that I was really wrong, right, about how prepared we are in general, not just for academic, but not non-academic options as well. And it's really accidental since I, 4 years ago, co-founded Protocols.io. It's sort of like a Wikipedia for science methods startup. I just discovered it. It was really shocking to me to realize how good our graduate education is at making us valuable for not just academic, but also non-academic jobs, right? It's the exact opposite. What I feel right now about my preparation during the PhD is the exact opposite of what I felt as a fourth-year grad student. And I actually wrote a whole long blog post called PhD is Perfect for a Startup. If you Google it, you can find it. This is not, the point isn't you should all go and do startups, right? That's the last thing I would recommend if you want security, stability, and sanity. For those few of you who have something in mind and want advice, find me later. But the real point is, as I was going through setting up, I have a great co-founder, but I'm the CEO, right? So my job is to raise the funding, communicate it to scientists, and make sure that we have revenue, get partnerships. And what I realized over these 4 years is I can't think of any training I could have gotten that would have better prepared me for running a startup, right? For raising venture capital, partnerships. Let's just say that I don't want to be dismissive about business school. It's good for certain things, but I know a lot of startups. We're in Silicon Valley. We've been through a Berkeley Accelerator. I'm in that ecosystem. I know a lot of startups. I know a lot of founders. From the good startups that I can think of, not a single one was founded by someone from business school. But there are a lot of them that were founded by PhDs from science because they've identified a particular need, right? And the things that I wrote about in this blog post, there are just so many things that beyond the gene and the species we're interested in, right, and the system we're studying in our postdoc and in our PhD, beyond that, there's training that happens on the side almost subconsciously that we're not aware of, right? So just some examples, your lab meetings. When you present at lab meetings, we don't think of that necessarily as training. We just think of it as a painful experience where your lab mates are trying to tell you that everything you've been doing for the last 5 months is not going to work, and you don't really have a paper that you think you do in this. But managing the lab meeting, right, your qualifying exam, your thesis committee meetings, answering the questions, learning how to control the room, learning how to answer the questions, it's an art. And it's an art that is perfectly translatable to presenting to VCs, because these are really, really sharp and skeptical people, just like the scientists you're presenting to, who are peppering you with questions, and you can't be too dismissive. You can't just start answering all of them, because then you will never get to presenting the rest of your lab meeting, right? So it's an art that we're actually pretty good at. Another thing, I'm not going to, because the introduction is supposed to be short. You can read the blog post to see the many parallels. It's quite long. One other thing I'll point out just as an example, rejections on your manuscript, right? That heartbreaking knife in your heart feeling when you get your first rejection. How many of you have experienced something like that? Okay, fair number. You think there's nothing positive about it. And then you realize years later, in retrospect, just what a good learning opportunity that was. Because how do you handle that rejection, right? What do you do with that? How do you respond? Do you throw a middle finger back at the reviewers and the editor and tell them they're the stupidest people on the planet? Or do you write a polite rebuttal? You think it's hard to get your paper published? Try getting $1 million from investors, right? You will get rejection, and it's all about how do you handle that rejection, how to use it as an opportunity to really rebut and frame and correct, right? Learn from the rejection and correct the way you're presenting it. So just tons and tons of things, and I feel incredibly prepared by the academic training for what I'm doing right now, which was a total surprise to me, right? This is not something I expected. And it's not just about startups. So if we go to question number two was, how prepared are you? And you can read up more on why you're prepared. But question 3 was, how aware do you feel about career options beyond tenure-track academic positions, right? And again, not surprisingly, the responses were mostly in the not so much, with no one being highly aware, a few people fairly aware, so there might be campus events, there might be seminars at your university that have exposed you to things, or you've taken the initiative, which is great. Me, in that 4th year, not only was I not aware, so I knew I could go back to software, but I would hate it. And then I was thinking, okay, so what are the other options for PhDs, for scientists, if they're not staying in academia? And like many of you, it seemed to me that there's basically science editing at a journal, industry, being in a pharmaceutical and doing research. I was in genetics, right? Molecular biology and computational biology. So I knew I could probably do that. And I knew people who were applying to McKinsey for consulting. And that's about 3 options that I was aware of, right? So that when you feel that you don't want to stay in academia and you feel unprepared for anything outside, and the things you're prepared for are 3, that is not inspiring. So one of the things we've done over the past year is we actually ran a survey for labs from SSE, where we asked the faculty to sit down and let us know where are the people who have done master's, PhD, and postdoc training with them. So 170 of them replied, and we've put it together. So this is a work in progress. This is a beta site that Mohammed started and we're contributing to. It's going to grow. We should probably post the link and make sure everyone has it. So it's Evolution's post-PhD, Evolution Careers. So there's the description of what our workshop. Oh, I'm not on the internet. That would be helpful. I think we have free Wi-Fi. Of all the things I was supposed to do over the half hour before starting the introduction, you'd think that I would connect to the internet. But we ran a survey, and we asked the faculty to really think, where are the people? And so one of the things we've done is we've taken all of the responses, and we spent a day as a group together. It was in DC, right? It was in DC, sitting, going through all of them and putting them together to indicate what are the broad fields people tend to be going to. So this is something you can look through. And specifically for the people that went into jobs directly after PhD, we asked, what are they doing now, right? And if I do connect, which I should be able to do right now, there is a link at the bottom. Oh, I preloaded all of these. There's a link at the bottom which actually takes you to the answers. We've anonymized it, and here's a Google Doc that has all of the responses from the faculty, trying to recall what are the things that their trainees tend to do. There are a lot of responses. It may be good to take a look and just to see what do people who are in the evolution field tend to do outside of academia, right? So there are options. Personally, on my side, one of the things that I discovered just through the startup work is, for example, that law firms will hire PhDs without a law degree, and they'll pay you over $100K, and they will even pay for you to go to law school part-time, which sounds insane, but they need scientists. And they're not hiring you because you're an expert on Saccharomyces cerevisiae. They're hiring you because you're a scientist, right? Because you know how to run experiments, how to evaluate data. They need you for intellectual property. work and figuring out prior art. So that's something that's in demand. That's something that I didn't know as a graduate student or a postdoc. It's only when we started a startup and started talking to the attorneys that I just learned this. We raise money from investors, and it turns out that VCs, venture capitalists, they hire scientists. It kind of makes sense. If you're in the life science space and you're supposed to invest 20 million in a new cancer drug or some other biotech idea, you probably want people who have recently graduated, who are on top of the modern tools, and can evaluate the proposals, right? And screen the companies, because you're going to invest in one or two this year. You probably have 300 biotech startups applying. So that's in demand. And this is from my perspective as a startup founder, right? These are things that I'm looking at. Then we realize, because we are building software for scientists, you need to be aware of the product. You need product managers if you're in IT. And so then you learn that companies like 23andMe and Illumina and Google want PhDs to work on product and to be able to interface with scientists, right, and talk to the engineers. So this is a very narrow slice of the options there, of the things in this world that value scientists. But again, the real point is, it's not the particular topic that you've been studying, right? You're valuable because you're a scientist, and all of the training and critical thinking that comes with that. And I know when you're about to get your PhD, you feel like the world consists entirely of PhDs, and everyone is exactly like you, so you have nothing particularly new to offer, but I assure you that's not the case. And the last thing, so I really do want to keep it short, the last question was, on the scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to apply for jobs which are not tenure-track, right? And so the responses were, if you can see it, no one said that it's completely out of the question, so I'm assuming few of you have a faculty offer right now, because you would have been in that category. Many of you are planning to apply for postdocs or faculty positions, exactly as I was. Neutral, and then a lot of people, of course, are thinking, I might or might not be looking at non-academic options. And so what I want to end with is, again, emphasizing what this workshop is about. It's not about telling you to go out of academia and that it's hopeless and that you'll never get funding and you'll never get the faculty position, and so you should just quit and go into a startup. That's not what this is about. The whole point of the workshop is, as I said, to help you find the right fit for you and to give you a little bit of advice throughout today and a little bit of preparation for how to go about it. Because the uplifting things that I was talking about, you're valuable and there are so many options, is fantastic. But at the end of the day, you come away from something, from a speech about how valuable you are and how many options you have, you sit down and you think, okay, well, that's great. There's all these jobs and I'm valuable, but which one will make me happy? How do I go about, because again, my professor has no idea how to introduce me to the VC world, right? That's not something, with the exception of a small minority that have on the side in the sabbatical year started their own companies. That's not what they do. So you end up in this state of, okay, I'm valuable, there are jobs out there, now what, right? I don't have contacts, I don't have a faculty advisor who can connect me necessarily to these people. Some of you, unfortunately, are in situations where if you tell your faculty advisor that's what you're thinking, it's not going to be very good for you in terms of the support. Hopefully, fewer and fewer people are in that position, and more advisors are aware of the landscape and that they need to support you whether you're going to be staying in academia or not. But the purpose of the rest of this workshop over the next few hours is just to give you a little bit of guidance on how you start, what are the approaches, how do you explore the opportunities, and how do you find the right fit for you, and then end up in that postdoc or that faculty job that you're aiming for, or something outside, and wherever you end up, to make sure that you're happy. Right? Any questions on the intro part? There'll be plenty of time for discussion. So with that, I will transfer the microphone to Liz.